We always kick the week off in fine style with Talk's excellent international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Welcome, Isabel.
Good evening, Kev. Well, we haven't been banned yet, but who knows how long we've got under this government.
I know. I put on Twitter a plug for the show this afternoon. I said, well, I thought I might as well plug it now on Twitter, on X, while I still can. We'll talk about that in a little while. Pretty eventful day today. Your thoughts on Nadhim Zahawi, massive Tory scalp, of course, former Chancellor, former serious bigwig in the Conservatives, left the politics in a way under something of a cloud over his tax affairs, hadn't really paid his taxes, therefore left under a cloud. But no doubt he'll be able to bring, as he made very clear today, some useful advice to Nigel Farage and Reform about how to govern the business and the machinery of government. He knows how it works. So he's a good catch. He's a big name. Do you think it's a good thing? Because a lot of Reform supporters are saying enough already. Enough of this disaffected Tories. Reform is turning into a dumping ground for Tories who lost their seat at the last election and don't think they'll gain one back at the next election. I believe that it's very important that Farage and the rest of the party articulate that I don't think it is a bad thing. I don't think it is a bad thing, because I've always said that what Reform are, they are what the traditional Conservative Party used to be. The Tory party has abandoned Conservative values. Reform UK has taken them on board, embraced them and exudes them. And it's not surprising that disaffected Tories, fed up with the increasing tendency of the Tory party to be sort of left-wing and migrant-friendly and, you know, kind of Me Too and all that. It's not surprising that old-school Tories are finding a happier berth with Reform. Do you agree?
Well, first of all, I totally understand why some Reform supporters or people that are thinking about backing Reform are concerned about this announcement today. The reason they're concerned is because the last thing they want is another party that looks and feels like the failed Conservatives. You know, I'm as angrier than most people about the massive betrayals and failures of the Conservative government, which we all had to endure for far too long. So what Reform supporters don't want, they really, really don't want, is more of the same. So I get that. But in Nadhim Zahawi, they're not getting more of the same. First of all, I'd be astonished if he has his sights on going back into the House of Commons. I don't think he wants to be an MP again. And
he wants to be a Lord because he asked the Tories, didn't he? And they said no. And that seems to be the story that leads to him defecting to Reform. Well, apparently he wrote to the Conservatives saying, can I be a Lord? And they basically said, no, you're a tax dodger, therefore you can't be a Lord. So now he's switched, he's crossed the House, as it were.
Well, that would be speculation. I don't know if that's the case. That's not really how it works when it comes to nominations for peerages. You don't generally write and say, can I be a peer? But anyway, I think that he has been pretty disaffected for a long time.
Yeah, sure.
He's very ideologically aligned with Reform. But let me just go to why is he worth having for Reform? Number one, he has a lot of government experience, and Reform is constantly being told it doesn't have enough people at the heart of the party at a senior level to form a government in future. You know, they've only got 5 MPs, and however many by-elections there might be between now and the next general election, it's not going to lead to a multiple of 5 MPs, even if Reform wins all of those by-elections, which is unlikely. So that means that even if Reform were to win a majority next time round, you've potentially only got 5 MPs that have actually got parliamentary experience, unless you take on some people that have already been MPs. So that's a really important factor. Second, and I actually think this is more important, is that Nadhim Zahawi has a strong track record as a very successful businessman. And that is fundamental to the ethos of reform. Reform is entrepreneurial. Reform is a disruptor. Reform wants people who know how to make money and run successful operations. That's really important too. Thirdly, he's incredibly well connected. He's a brilliant networker, and particularly in the Middle East, he's got very, very good diplomatic connections. And fourthly, not in this order, he is a very good communicator. So he faced a bunch of quite difficult questions in that press conference today. And I thought he handled them really well. He's a good performer, and he handled them with good humor, and he was very quick off the mark. So that's me selling it to people who are tonight feeling, you know what, gosh, I mean, is this the way the party's going? Are we just going to have an endless stream of retreads? The answer to that is no. It is so much more exciting to that, but we do need some figures like Nadhim Zahawi.
Let's have a look at Nadhim performing today at the press conference to announce his defection.
So I stand here with the leader of my new party to offer my help and my insights to the dynamic, confident team that Nigel Farage is building, and to urge others from across all the other parties and the many millions who until now felt that politics isn't for them to come and join us. Come and join us. You know Britain is broken. You know it needs reform.
I don't think anyone would argue with that. Now, let me just quickly, we've got another 5 minutes before we go to break, and I want to talk about this, Isabel, because Nadhim Zahawi is obviously a Muslim. He hails from Iraq. He was born in Iraq. It's my understanding he's not a particularly devoted or devout Muslim, but that's up to him. That's his business. But he is a Muslim. You've also got Zia Youssef, of course, leading light in the party, who's also a Muslim. And, of course, now we have Laila Cunningham, the London mayor candidate, who is a practising Muslim. She, quite justifiably, in my view, says it's got nothing to do with it. She says, first of all, I am British. I happen to be a Muslim. And I know Laila sort of slightly socially, and I know for a fact, you know, this nonsense about her being an Islamist is exactly that. Absolute crap. Absolutely not true. She's just a British citizen who wants to do the best for her country, just as she wanted to do the best for Westminster Council. So the point is that, I mean, I've asked Laila this before, and Laila gave an interview yesterday to the Sunday Telegraph, and she makes no bones about it. She would favour the banning of the burqa. She said that as a Muslim woman, she basically, probably as mayor, she won't be able to ban it. You can't ban it in a city. You have to ban it in a country. She said if the country doesn't ban the burqa, what she would do as London mayor, as also the head of the Met Police, which is what the London mayor is, she would instruct the police to stop and search anyone with a full face covering on, which may include other people other than women forced to wear this all-over burqa covering. So that's what she said. She said she would favour the banning of the burqa, but if we can't ban it nationally, she would get the police in London to stop and search anyone they saw with a full face. So she's making her feelings very clear about the burqa. She doesn't like it. She doesn't want it in this country. Zia Youssef has said the same, and I'm pretty certain that their other big-name Muslim now, Nadhim Zahawi, would echo those views. So I guess my question is more and more we hear this. You've got countries like France, Austria, Switzerland, Tunisia, Sri Lanka, for God's sake. You know, Tunisia, a Muslim country, have all banned the burqa. I mean, I know it's a long shot, but isn't it about time Labour listened to this and thought about it? Yeah, I know. Well, just answer, you know, I'm going through the motions.
Yeah, and much as I love Laila's idea of it, you know, for London, of it being a prompt for stop and search, the police would be incredibly busy, wouldn't they? Because there are so many burqas in certain parts of London, particularly Knightsbridge, by the way. You know, one of the most probably the most affluent part of London is absolutely full of burqas. I think that what's happening in Iran the uprising of the most incredibly brave women who are throwing off their burqas, taking off those repressive garments in a very repressive regime, shows actually a bit of the truth about the burqa, that most women, you know, I don't know there's anyone's done an enormous global survey on this in which women tell the truth, but I don't think most women want to wear those things. I wouldn't dream of telling any country in the Middle East where I live what they should and shouldn't do. But for the UK, I don't think the burqa is appropriate where I recoil at it when I see it in the UK. And frankly, I see many more burqas in the UK. Yeah. I do here in Dubai in the Middle East.
Yeah, they're not particularly popular in Muslim countries, and certainly in Iran, where they're compulsory. What is being made very clear right now is the women in particular are rising up in fury and saying, we don't want to wear these damn things anymore. So my kind of thought is, I mean, I know Labour will never do it because they're so cravenly worried about the Muslim vote, but while these brave women in Tehran and around Iran risk their lives saying, let us show our faces again, it would be nice if Britain showed some solidarity and said, well, you know what, we're going to ban those damn things.
Yeah, look, I just don't think that they are aligned with our values and the kind of equality that Labour particularly goes on and on and on and on about. How are they a symbol of equality? They are the absolute opposite of that, and yet Labour champions of equality and diversity and inclusion are curiously silent on that discrepancy, aren't they?
They are, and they're curiously silent on Iran generally, as is the BBC, and we'll talk about that, both those elements of this unfolding story, when we come back, Isabel. Right, let's talk about Labour's or our government's reaction to what's been going on in Iran, the incredible scenes as the people rise up almost as one. You know, it's thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people just demanding the downfall of the Ayatollah and that god-awful theocratic regime, which has destroyed dreams, destroyed lives, destroyed that once great country ever since the Shah fell back in 1979. Now, the Shah of Persia was no great shakes either, but what the Ayatollahs, what the Mad Mullahs have done to that country is an absolute disgrace, and they are currently, as we speak, killing protesters on the streets. It looks as if regime change may be on the way. Certainly the Ayatollah is in a world of trouble. Hope it gets even worse for him. Now, I would contend, still with Isabel Oakeshott, Talks International editor, by the way, that Keir Starmer, Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, Labour should be singing from the rooftops. Let's end this god-awful regime. The geopolitical effect in the Middle East would be dramatic and to the West's advantage, to say the least. Here's Nigel Farage, who attended a protest today against the Ayatollah outside the Iranian embassy. Let's have a little listen to what the Reform UK leader had to say.
You beautiful Persian people, you wonderful people, you freedom fighters. This time, are we going to win? Yes, we are! Yes, we're going to win. And the terrible price being made by many innocent people in every Iranian city right now. But you've got to believe that this is the moment.
We really appreciate you. May God bless you. And we wish everything good.
Well, may God bless all of you and let freedom for Iran.
Well, in my view, that's the way to do it. What have we had from the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary and various other members of that cabinet crew? It's this. They basically, all of them have just said, we call upon the Ayatollah to respect the right of the people to protest, to peacefully protest, which is as I said in my monologue, that is as empty as it is pointless. Oh, we call upon the Ayatollah to protect the people's right to protest.
Right.
As he's out in his people, his mad mullahs are out in the streets murdering people as we speak. So this really strange, muted response to potential regime change in Iran, we as a Western democracy should be like Nigel Farage, calling for the downfall of this god-awful tyranny that has ruined that country and ruined life for its 90 million residents for what is it now, 50 years or so. Well, that's what the Prime Minister should be doing. That's what the Foreign Secretary should be saying. That's what the Cabinet should be saying. Instead, we call upon the Ayatollah to protect the people's right to protest. Well, why so muted, do you think, Isabel?
I mean, could it be that the collapse of the regime would be a massive victory for Israel? Might that perhaps have something to do with it?
I knew there was a reason. I knew it.
Yeah, look, I've been astonished by the lack of kind of energy and enthusiasm and solidarity, that's the word, from our government for what is potentially the most momentous revolution since the fall of the Berlin Wall. I mean, it's huge. It's huge. If this regime were to collapse, the effect on world politics would be absolutely seismic. You know, it changes everything about the dynamics of the Middle East, absolutely everything. And it changes a lot for the UK. I mean, when you think of the most hostile states, the most dangerous regimes, the ones that pose the greatest threat to our peace and prosperity in the UK, they are Russia and Iran. Those are the two, and China, arguably, those three, that kind of axis of evil. And Iran is right up there. So why is there such kind of quiet about this? It is really, really disturbing. And you're right about the BBC. I mean, towards the end of last week and over the weekend, I kept on refreshing on the BBC website, thinking I'm desperate for updates about what's going on in Iran, desperate to hear the latest, the breaking news, the developments. And even on the world pages, which is what I see automatically here in the Middle East, there's basically nothing there. I was so bewildered about this that I rang a very, very well-known BBC insider, somebody whose name I won't share, but everybody would respect this person, and said, look, what is going on here? Am I missing something? Yeah. And the answer that came back is not that there's any kind of conspiracy here, but was a load of, frankly, respectfully, blah about how difficult it is for the BBC to verify what's going on.
Give me a break.
I like, because you can't have any journalists in there. And I'm thinking, yes, but there's a ton of material coming out of Iran, and you can just report it with caveat.
Well, listen.
And you know, I'm really worried, Kev, I'm getting really worried that the regime is regaining some kind of upper hand. That is what really worries me, because the executions that are going on now, the summary murders that are going on, we see this from footage, are terrifying. Yeah.
Well, you've run ahead of my very carefully choreographed schedule here, because I was going to do the BBC next. We'll come back to that in a minute. That's not your fault, by the way. It doesn't matter anyway. It's all very relevant. To go back, we'll return to the BBC in just a little while, but to go back to the government, to Starmer and the gang, Trump's people, America, the American government has made it very, very clear today that that Britain should, and indeed must, prescribe Iran's infamous Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC as they're called, as a terrorist organisation. The government is adamant it will not ban this lot. Why not? They're a bunch of murderous thugs. This is our moment. Let's ban them. Let's prescribe. If you're going to prescribe Palestine action, bunch of middle-class idiots going around spray painting aeroplanes on RAF bases, surely we can prescribe bona fide Muslim maniacs who murder and rape their citizens. Why won't Labour ban the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps? Why won't they do that? Trump is saying it's obvious they're a terrorist organisation. You must ban them. Why is Starmer resisting that, do you think, Isabel?
I mean, for the same reason maybe that he's manifestly failed to ban the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah.
You know, again and again, he's chosen not to ban the Muslim Brotherhood, more Islamic extremists. And, you know, there's an extraordinary story a few days ago about how the Emiratis, the Emirati leadership, will no longer support Emirati students to go to UK universities because they're worried about the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, it comes to something, doesn't it, when we're shamed and humiliated by moderate Muslim countries about allowing radical Islam to mushroom in our own country, a supposedly Christian country.
Yeah, and Saudi Arabia has banned the Muslim Brotherhood. I think where you are, they've banned the Muslim Brotherhood. All these Muslim countries, these Islamic countries across the Middle East have banned the Muslim Brotherhood, but in Britain, we don't ban the Muslim Brotherhood. In fact, weirdly, the only European country to ban the Muslim Brotherhood is Austria. The rest of the countries don't. You cannot help but conclude that Starmer and the rest of Europe's craven leaders are just terrified about losing the Muslim vote. I mean, if you could just sit old Starmer down and say, listen, Keir, why don't you just forget about the Muslim vote? Pursue other potential votes you might be able to gain. It would make him such a happier man, and we, Britain, would have far more cogent, sensible policies about the Islamist threat, wouldn't we?
Indeed, and it's pretty concerning about what does it say about the state of our country if Labour figures are worried about losing votes from if they were to ban the Muslim Brotherhood. That says that they think there are a lot of Muslim Brotherhood sympathisers in the UK, which there are. And that in itself is something that needs to be rooted out, because it is not taking our country in a good direction.
It's certainly not. Now, breaking news, Isabel, you'll be excited by this. Yvette Cooper has tweeted in the last hour. She's gone on to X. While she still can. She said before she bans it and her mates ban it, she's tweeted this: the killing and brutal repression of peaceful protesters in Iran is horrific. I have spoken to Foreign Minister Araghchi and told him directly the Iranian government must immediately end the violence, uphold fundamental rights and freedoms, and ensure British nationals are safe. Why did she even waste her time posting that? What does that...
The Iranian government has never done any of the things that she's listed there. Never. They have never done that. This regime has never done that in peace times when they weren't under pressure. So I don't think that having had a little call from Yvette Cooper, they're going to go, oh gosh, yes, the British Foreign Secretary has called us and asked us to keep British nationals safe.
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, any British national that ventures anywhere near Iran, even before this, is pretty likely not coming back home again. So that won't be happening. Complete waste of space.
Yeah, I mean, when she tweets this, the killing and brutal repression of peaceful protesters in Iran is horrific. I'm with her there, absolutely. And then she says, "Oh, I've uphold fundamental rights and freedom, ensure British." What about tweeting something about the British government's desire for this god-awful regime to fall? I mean, because Labour seem to be missing the point. If Iran falls, this is going to be a tremendous day for the West. Fantastic day for the West. Our government doesn't seem to be at all keen on that happening. Is it that they are so blinded by their hatred of Israel that they don't want in any way something to happen that Israel will be pleased about, as in the fall of Iran? Is it as pathetic as that?
I really am sort of lost for words as to how to explain why anyone wouldn't want to recognise the danger that the Iranian regime, as it is at the moment, poses to the whole world, to the whole civilized world, and how horrendous it is to live under for the Iranian people. And I have no difficulty with this. It's straightforward. You know, I'm with Nigel Farage. I would just be able to straightforwardly say this is an abhorrent, terrifying, hideous regime in which people are not able to live remotely good and free lives, and we want to see the back of it. And I just hope that Trump makes good on his pledge to stand with the Iranian people. It really feels like what is needed now is for America to deliver the death blow to the regime, because there is a limit to what people can do, ordinary people, as brave and incredibly courageous as they're being. You know, the regime has guns, the regime has the tools with which to mow them down and execute them. And it's going to take something more, I think.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that when we come back, the American response, perhaps a little bit more on the BBC. So we're going to carry on discussing the dramatic events, the turbulence in Iran, where I guess if Trump plays his cards right, if the West plays our cards right, you know, we can assist the downfall of this disastrous regime, the Ayatollah and his mad mullahs, this religious tyranny that they impose on 90 million long-suffering citizens who've never liked it, never wanted it. They just yearn to get their freedom back. Maybe, just maybe, we should be helping the uprising along the way to get rid of the Ayatollah. Good day for us, good day for the Iranians. What's not to like? Let's talk about that when we come back. Welcome back, still with Talk's international editor Isabel Oakeshott. Yeah, to go back to the BBC, Isabel, I mean, is this the same as the government that we've been speculating? Do you think it's that the BBC just never likes to see anything that arguably is a triumph for Israel? The fall of Iran will be a triumph for Israel. A lot of the reason that Iran is teetering on the edge is because of Israel. It's also because of the West. It's because of Israeli aggression against them, and it's because of sanctions by Israel and the rest of the world against Iran. And now Iran's economy is, you know, to say it's in the toilet is an exaggeration. It's too generous. It's an absolute basket case. So that's why the regime there is unraveling. But this was towards the end of last week, as it was already really happening on Friday. And you were hard-pressed to find any reports on the BBC. It wasn't even their lead story going into Friday. Why do you think that is? Is it because they just hate at the BBC to see anything that's good for Israel?
Well, I definitely think there will be an element of that. And in fact, you know, you're right about Friday. That was one of the days where I was getting really frustrated, not finding any coverage. But actually, the protests had been pretty serious and substantial for several days by then.
Yep.
I think it was an absolute dereliction of duty by the BBC not to be covering that properly. And I was actually talking to somebody with links to the eldest son of the Shah, the figure in Washington, D.C., who is potentially going to come back and take over if this regime does fall. And he is the guy that they're all shouting for on the streets, that many of them are putting all their hopes in. And according to people in the know, BBC Persia is full of the most awful propaganda, as you might perhaps expect, which is not nearly as critical of the regime as it should be. And I just find it quite frustrating that we are still in this position where we're not getting much information. Now, I get it that the BBC, you know, it's going to hold itself to the highest journalistic standards about that, by the way. You and I have had many conversations. But that will be the ostensible reason, because, you know, they just can't make any mistakes, etc., etc., etc. But I don't think that's good enough. I would still like to have seen a bunch of reports that said, look, we've got this unverified footage, this is what we're hearing, and here are the implications if this goes all the way. And it just hasn't been there, has it?
No. It was clear by Friday that this was a massive story. There was loads of footage around to prove that this uprising was huge and unfolding in every major Iranian city, particularly Tehran. So the BBC's decision to stick it way down its news schedule is really suspicious. I don't know what was going on in their heads, and any old claptrap about it was so difficult to verify. Well, no other news organisation in the world was having any difficulty putting together a serious picture of revolt in Iran. The BBC seem to find it almost impossible to do. Very, very strange. What do you feel about Donald Trump? Now, he was saying all last week that if the mad mullahs, if the Ayatollah and his men start killing the protesters, then America will not hesitate to act. Well, as of this morning, I believe the death toll, or yesterday I think the death toll was 538 and rising. I wouldn't mind betting it's not getting towards 1,000 now. They are killing the protesters, and they are killing them at an alarmingly fast rate. Now, there were stories yesterday to say that Trump wanted to act, but has been told by his military, we need a bit of planning. We can't just do this. So they haven't gone in yet. Do you think he will go in?
If I were to guess, I would say yes, absolutely. And we do know that Trump, they love, his whole style is the element of surprise, isn't it? So there may well be some grand strategy here that involves sort of letting the Iranians think that the Americans have blinked, and in fact, all hell is about to be unleashed on IRGC targets. That would be my great hope. And if America doesn't act now to deliver that death blow, then when will they ever? This feels like the absolute moment. It's not going to come up again. If this revolution attempt fails, if this grand, incredible uprising is crushed now, then I don't see how that regime is not just going to be more emboldened and more horrendous, more horrific and more dangerous to the world. And I'm sure that is well recognised in the White House.
And don't forget, in 2023, there was a fair old uprising against the Ayatollah then in Iran. And as is their wont, the mad mullahs crushed that with murderous ruthlessness. And the danger here is, as you say, Isabel, this is our moment, if you like. This is the West moment. This is the moment for the Iranian people. If it doesn't work this time, we may have to wait a long time before the next time. And yes, I think that if the West can help, especially America, they damn well should, and they should do it fast. Listen, let's go to break now, and let's talk about the other very big story of the day, Labour's apparent desire to ban X, or Twitter as everybody still calls it. We'll talk about that next. Right, let's talk about Twitter, shall we, or X as it is now called. It is in trouble because of a system called Deepfake, which is the Grok facility, also owned by Elon Musk, who owns X, of course, offered to users of Twitter. And what's been happening is that nefarious individuals have been taking sort of women's heads, faces, if you like, and kind of imaging on as if they're wearing a bikini. So that's happening all over the shop. Well, I'm still with Isabel Oakeshott, Talks International editor. Isabel, before we talk about this, let's get both sides of the story, as it were. First of all, here's a Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, with her thoughts on the proposal to ban X.
I think banning X is the wrong answer. I'm not even sure what question it is that they're answering. What we are seeing is a Labour government that did not have a plan, and they're just throwing out random policies, probably to distract from the fact that they're putting businesses in a very difficult position. What was happening was the business rates discussion, lots of pubs complaining, and then all of a sudden Labour talks about banning X. I don't think that's a serious solution.
Here's Labour Minister Peter Kyle with his thoughts.
In this country, we have independent regulators, and when it comes to enforcement, it is not the decisions of ministers like me as to whether somebody is sanctioned or fined or not. It is about upholding the law. Now, I brought in measures that strengthen the law, that raise the ceiling on the law when it came to protecting children and protecting everybody from hate and criminal activity online. The independent regulator and enforcement agency, Ofcom, is now deciding whether X has stepped outside of the law with the way that Grok, the AI-generated chatbot, is integrated with X and is generating nudifying images. Some of the things I have seen and heard about are disgusting and clearly unlawful, and I expect that to be dealt with.
So, Isabel, what's happening to women on X at the moment is obviously wrong and disturbing, and it would be best if it could be stopped. You know, it's for somebody, it probably will happen to you before too long. They'll take your face and they will sort of graft on a bikini body. So you'll be wearing a bikini and all that. It's happened to Julia Hartley-Brewer, who says that she's furious because they haven't changed her hair. But the point is, this is bad. Of course it should be banned. It should be stopped if possible. But to be honest with you, it's not the worst horror that is unfolding on social media right now. You know, the easy access to pornography, particularly by kids, you know, hardcore porn. Women in bikinis, albeit not their own bodies. I'm not approving of that. I'm not condoning of it. It is wrong. But it is not the worst atrocity on social media. So you kind of wonder why Labour are seriously getting their knickers in a twist about this and saying we're going to ban X. They've referred it to the broadcasting watchdog, the media watchdog Ofcom. They're investigating. So my question to you, do you think this is Labour have suddenly said, well, this bikini business, this Grok, that crosses the line. They've finally gone and done it now. We're going to ban it because of this bikini Grok thing. Or do you think it's because they really hate Elon Musk and Elon Musk owns X? Elon Musk responded to Labour's proposal by sticking a picture of Keir Starmer on X with a bikini on and calling the Labour government fascists. Do you think it is that Labour don't really like freedom of speech? They don't really like social media. They don't really like the ability that X and Twitter and other sites bestow upon ordinary members of the public to have a certain power to publish their thoughts. And the crescendo of criticism on X every day for Keir Starmer and his gormless government is off the scale. Be quite handy, quite nice for Labour to get rid of that by banning X, wouldn't it?
Well, they're not going to ban X. I think that's vanishingly unlikely, frankly inconceivable. And I mean, I'm with you on this. I'm just not that worked up about it. I'm certainly worked up about it in relation to children, but that would be illegal in any case, I'm sure. To do that in relation to children would be illegal. I mean, I've already seen a funny image of Keir Starmer today in a pair of Y fronts. I mean, it was quite humorous. I mean, I'm struggling to erase that image from my head. It was a bit unsettling, but it was just quite funny. And you know what? I'm sure that there's weird pictures of so many controversial figures, you know, all of us probably, around. You know, I'm always seeing strange pictures of politicians turned into something else. And, you know, really, it's not the worst thing in the world. I don't love it. I don't love women to be demeaned in this way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Male politicians are getting the same thing. You know, in different outfits, whatever, they're being made to look ridiculous. And that is just slightly part of our culture, isn't it? That we do allow people to use their skills to make people look ridiculous. And as long as they're clothed-ish, and it's not actually offensive, you know, I do think there are rather bigger things to be worrying about.
My suspicion is that, with Liz Kendall, the technology minister, and Peter Kyle there, they stand up and say, we're trying to protect children in pornography on the, nobody's going to go, oh, well, you shouldn't be doing that. But I think that what they do is they say, this is all about protecting children, protecting women on social media. I'm not so sure it is all about protecting women and children on social media. I believe it's a way of getting back at Elon Musk, who is a little bit more than a thorn in Starmer's side, if you see where I'm coming from.
I think that, and I think there's an awful lot of stuff around at the moment that is just part of distracting British voters from the true failings of this government. I mean, look how quickly we all stopped talking about the Egyptian extremist Al Fatah, who the government rolled out the red carpet for. An absolutely disastrous story for this government, but they've contributed to making it go away by coming up with all sorts of other non-stories to get us all talking. Do you remember last week's reduce the drink driving limit to zero, and it's just almost as if they're just like chucking stuff out there just to try and distract from the fundamental massive problems, including, by the way, the amount of maneuverings against Starmer himself and increasing speculation of a return to the Commons by Andy Burnham, the Manchester mayor.
Yeah, indeed. And I tend to agree with you. I mean, I think I said earlier, I'm just hoping that this government, that Starmer and his crew, his cabinet crew, do have the bandwidth to realise that if they did shut down Twitter, with or without the advice or the instructions of Ofcom. Peter Kyle saying, well, you don't realise there's independent watchdogs, they're the ones who'll make the decision. Yeah, right. Ofcom do it or whether the government do it, I hope that this government has got the bandwidth to realise what a catastrophic move that would be, how that would make them look like the Ayatollah. The Ayatollah shut down social media. The Ayatollah has shut down the internet. Do Labour really think it's a good look to follow suit?
I mean, there are an awful lot of people as well who actually rely on X for business reasons. It's actually been around so long and is a critical part of promotion for certain types of businesses. So, that may be a dimension that they haven't particularly thought of, but is an important one. But I absolutely can't see it happening. It does feel a bit, massively like throwing the baby out with the bathwater if because of one AI capability within X, you were going to ban the whole thing. I mean, it's just not going to happen, is it?
And it would, as I say, there's no getting away from the fact, this government is a socialist government. Socialists don't really like free speech. And they don't certainly like the ability of social media to empower individuals. I've heard a lot of discussions to say, oh, there's no doubt about it, social media has made the world a worse place. It's caused so many problems. Yeah, I get all that. It really has caused a whole plethora of serious problems, cultural, social, political, and so on and so forth. Politicians now operate in a completely different world to the pre-social media politicians, people like Margaret Thatcher. People go, what would Margaret Thatcher do in these circumstances? Well, probably a lot different than she used to do because she didn't have to contend with social media. So I get all the problems with social media, but I think in the end that what politicians don't like about social media is that people no longer have to suffer in silence. A housewife in Derby or a plumber in Plymouth, if they see something they don't like and they put a good tweet out, that can get millions of views. It empowers individuals against the power of the government, and I think that's what politicians in Westminster don't like, that suddenly the people have a voice. They don't have to suffer in silence over this government's, in particular, its awful policies.
Yes, it gives potentially everybody a platform and a voice, and allows people who are absolutely unknown to become almost overnight very, very powerful voices for change. And that is dangerous for any government. And it also routinely makes a mockery in a very entertaining way of the people who lead us. I'm thinking of the sort of fantastically entertaining depictions of Prime Minister's questions where Starmer's shown as a robot and Yvette Cooper and Rachel Reeves are shown as squawking pigeons. They're very funny. And Kemi Badenoch as a rap artist, I mean, actually, I think it's done her a whole lot of good. And, you know, they don't like this stuff, do they? And they reach for the instinctive tool of big state repressive authoritarians like Starmer and just say, oh, well, maybe we'll ban it.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say, though. Let's see what they actually will do.